It was a typical Tuesday evening when my world turned upside down. I, Sarah Johnson, a 35-year-old graphic designer, was about to uncover a truth that would shatter the serene facade of my marriage. Walking into our shared high-end SUV, I found my husband Ethan's phone buzzing with an unfamiliar number. Curiosity overtook me. The text on the screen was like a punch to the gut. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love, Mia." My heart sank. Ethan, the man I had trusted implicitly, was cheating on me. I confronted him as he walked through the door. His reaction was not of shame or remorse, but of arrogance. "So what if I am seeing someone else? What are you going to do about it, Sarah?" His words stung like acid. We stood in our living room, a room that had witnessed countless laughs and tender moments, now a battleground of betrayal. "The SUV. I want it," Ethan demanded. The audacity of his demand left me momentarily speechless. It was my dream car, purchased before our marriage, and now he wanted to claim it as his own. "Fine, take the damn car," I retorted, my voice laced with a venom I didn't know I possessed. "But remember, the loan comes with it. $6,000 a month. Can you handle that, Mr. Successful?" Ethan's face contorted with anger. "I'll manage. Don't you worry about that," he snapped. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I collapsed onto the sofa. Tears streamed down my face, not just for the loss of my marriage, but for the betrayal of my trust. In that moment, I vowed to myself, Ethan would pay for this betrayal, not just the car loan, but the emotional debt he owed me. This was just the beginning. I would make sure Ethan regretted the day he decided to deceive me. It was time for the real Sarah Johnson to stand up and fight back. Life after Ethan's revelation became a surreal nightmare. I watched as the man I once loved transformed into someone I barely recognized. His once kind words were now barbed with cruelty, his actions thoughtless and selfish. One evening, as I prepared dinner in our once happy kitchen, Ethan sauntered in, reeking of arrogance. "Sarah, where are my keys? I need the SUV tonight." I paused, knife in hand, slicing through a tomato. The simplicity of the task contrasted sharply with the complexity of my emotions. "Why do you need it? You have your own car." Ethan's laugh was cold, devoid of any warmth I once knew. "Your SUV rides better, and Mia prefers it," he said, his words laced with a smugness that made my skin crawl. I fought the urge to lash out, to scream at him for his audacity. Instead, I replied with forced calmness, "Fine, but remember, every mile you drive, every moment you spend with her in that car, you're just adding to the debt you owe me." He shrugged, a gesture that conveyed his utter disregard for my feelings. "Whatever, Sarah. You always make a big deal out of nothing." That night, as I sat alone in the quiet house, I couldn't shake off the feeling of despair. Ethan's indifference was more painful than his betrayal. It was clear he saw me as nothing more than a nuisance, a minor obstacle in his pursuit of selfish pleasures. But amidst the turmoil, a fire was kindling within me. I wouldn't let Ethan's cruelty break me. I would stand strong, and I would make him regret underestimating me. This wasn't just about a car or broken vows anymore. It was about respect, about standing up for myself against someone who thought he could trample over me without consequence. Ethan had unleashed a storm, and he would soon learn that I was its eye. The day I had dreaded, yet somehow anticipated, finally arrived. It was an ordinary Thursday, yet nothing about it felt normal. I returned home early from work, planning to surprise Ethan with a dinner, a feeble attempt to salvage whatever was left of our marriage. As I approached our house, I noticed the SUV parked oddly in the driveway, rocking gently. My heart sank. With trepidation, I moved closer, the murmur of voices growing clearer. Ethan's voice, laced with a familiarity that once belonged to us, and a woman's laughter, carefree, mocking. Pressing my ear against the cool metal, I heard the words that shattered the last vestiges of my hope. "I can't wait to leave her, Mia. Marrying Sarah was a mistake, a boring, pathetic mistake." The pain of his words was physical, a visceral stab to my heart. I stepped back, numb, the ground beneath me seemingly giving way. But as I stumbled, my bag struck the car with a thud, revealing my presence. Ethan emerged, his face a mix of shock and anger. "Sarah? What the hell are you doing here?" I stood there, frozen, struggling to find my voice. "Ethan, how could you?" His response was devoid of remorse. "Why not, Sarah? You're nothing to me anymore. Mia, she's everything you're not." The disdain in his voice was palpable, but it was in that moment of utter humiliation and heartbreak that something within me shifted. The pain gave way to a cold, seething anger. No more tears, no more weakness. You'll regret this, Ethan. I promise you. You will regret every word, every betrayal. He scoffed, his arrogance unshaken. Regret? I doubt it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do. As they drove away, leaving me alone in the growing darkness, a resolve hardened within me. Ethan had made his choice, and now it was my turn. I wouldn't be the victim of his story. I was going to write my own ending, one where Ethan faced the consequences of his actions. It was time for retribution. Ethan had underestimated me for the last time. In the weeks that followed, I transformed my grief and anger into action. I sought out a lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Miss Carleton, who listened to my story with a mixture of sympathy and steely determination. Ethan needs to be held accountable, not just for the infidelity, but for the years of emotional torment, Miss Carleton stated firmly. We'll make sure he regrets his actions. I handed her the evidence I had collected, including the dashcam footage from the SUV that captured Ethan's betrayal. Her eyes narrowed as she watched, her resolve hardening. This is more than enough. We'll file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity and emotional abuse. The legal proceedings were draining. Ethan's true nature was exposed for all to see, the selfishness, the cruelty, the utter lack of remorse. And Claire, the executive's daughter, was no better. Her arrogance matched Ethan's as they sat side by side, confident and unrepentant. The court ruled in my favor. Ethan's facade crumbled under the weight of his actions. His assets, including the SUV, were to be divided, but more importantly, he was ordered to pay a substantial amount in alimony. Leaving the courthouse, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. I had won, not just in legal terms, but in reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. As Ethan and Claire exited, their faces a portrait of defeat and shock, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. They had underestimated me, thinking they could walk over me without consequence. You'll regret this, Sarah. Ethan spat out, his voice bitter. I already have, Ethan, I replied, my voice steady and calm, regretting the day I ever thought you were the one. Turning away, I walked into my new life, one where I was no longer bound by Ethan's deceit and manipulation. It was a life of my own making, a life where I was the author of my own story. The finality of the divorce brought a new dawn in my life. I moved into a modest apartment, a space that was mine alone, free from Ethan's shadow. Each morning I woke up to a sense of peace, a stark contrast to the years of turmoil. But true liberation came in the most unexpected way. Ethan, unable to handle his financial obligations, called me one evening, his voice laced with desperation. Sarah, you have to help me. The alimony, the car loan, it's too much. I can't keep up, he pleaded. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. The once proud and arrogant Ethan was now groveling for my mercy. You should have thought about that before, Ethan, I replied, my voice void of any sympathy. You made your bed. Now, you have to lie in it. But Sarah, we were married. Doesn't that mean anything to you? His voice cracked, a mix of anger and helplessness. It meant something until you destroyed it, I said, my words final. You have to face the consequences of your actions, Ethan. That's not my responsibility anymore. The call ended with Ethan's defeated sigh, a sound that echoed the crumbling of his once unshakable ego. In the weeks that followed, news of Ethan's downfall spread. He had lost his job, his reputation tarnished. Claire, the woman he left me for, had moved on, leaving him in a pit of his own making. The sense of vindication was bittersweet. While I took no pleasure in his suffering, there was a sense of justice being served. Ethan had finally reaped what he had sown. I spent my days rebuilding my life, reconnecting with old friends, and diving into my work. My evenings were quiet, filled with the books and music I loved, the simple pleasures that Ethan had once scoffed at. As I lay in bed each night, I realized that the greatest revenge was living well, away from the chaos and pain Ethan brought into my life. I had emerged from the ashes of our marriage, not just surviving but thriving. Months had passed since my divorce from Ethan, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I had found solace in my work and the small joys of everyday life. That peace, however, was momentarily disrupted by an unexpected call. It was Ethan. His voice, once brimming with confidence, now sounded frail and defeated. Sarah, I need your help. I've lost everything. I've even had to move back in with my parents. The news didn't surprise me. The Ethan I knew was never equipped to face real adversity. "And you're calling me because?" I asked, my tone cool and detached. "I thought maybe, we could start over. Forget everything and try again?" His proposal was ludicrous, a desperate clutch at straws from a man who had lost all control over his life. "Start over? After everything you've done?" I replied, incredulity lacing my words. "Ethan, you seem to forget. You cheated, you lied, you belittled me, and now you want to start over?" There was a pause, a heavy silence that spoke volumes. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. I was a fool, and I've paid the price for it." His apology, although probably sincere, was too little too late. "Your apology doesn't change the past, Ethan, nor does it erase the pain you caused." "So that's it? You're just going to leave me like this?" The desperation in his voice was palpable, but it no longer had any effect on me. "That's exactly what I'm going to do, Ethan. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them," I said firmly. The call ended with Ethan's quiet sobbing. It was a sound that once might have stirred pity in me, but now it was just a reminder of the man he had been and the man he had become. As I set down the phone, I felt a profound sense of closure. Ethan's downfall was a result of his own actions, his own choices. I had moved on, built a new life for myself, a life filled with hope and possibility. Looking out the window, I realized that this was my new beginning. A life free from Ethan's shadow, a life where I was in control. I had come out of this stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely happy.